chocolate isn't the answer, could you repeat the question? Hello, I'm Pat Coakley, and welcome to PODSNACKS, Art of the Diet, the weekly podcast that each week tries to ask the right question about how to maintain a significant weight loss. You can access all the episodes on www.artofthediet.com. So, hello. It is January 2nd, 2019. And this is Pat Coakley. And it's been a month since I've posted. And once again, I was very happy to have an interview in December with Gila. And today, I don't have an interview, except with myself. And I don't know where it's going, but I suspect it's going to be a shorter than normal podcast with a lot of the usual suspects. And let me start off with the first laugh that I had in 2019. And it happened to be a bit of news from 2018, the final week, that I had missed because, as many of you know, I can't have a steady diet of news these days, or else I'll be 6 feet under. So I'm on a diet of news. And the good news is that I'm fairly successful with this diet of news. So I'm not getting the drip, drip, drip every day of craziness. But anyway, I did see this quote from Nancy Pelosi. Now, let me tell you, Nancy Pelosi went to high school at the same high school that I went to, except on a different coast, run by the same nuns, the same structure. She's, maybe 3 or 4 years older than I am, but I think basically the school was the same. And when I read this quote, I went, oh my God, maybe my sense of humor has more to do with those nuns than I ever thought. Anyway, this is her comment on who's ever-shifting description of what this wall is going to look like. So she says, first of all, the fact that he says we're going to build a wall with cement and Mexico's going to pay for it, while he's already backed off of the cement. And now he's down to, I think, a beaded curtain or something. I'm not sure where he is, Pelosi said in an interview with USA Today, published Tuesday. So all I have to say is, beware of Sacred Heart girls, because we can skewer you and you won't see it coming. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for this laugh, because I did start off with that because any other reading of the news doesn't start me off laughing. So some things never change, and this is just getting worse and worse in my view. So there you go. Okay, but it is January 2nd, 2019, and this is a podcast titled PODSNACKS, Art of the Diet. And to tell you the truth, I'm not struggling with maintaining my 60-pound weight loss. And a few pounds more actually now after this past 6 months. But I tried to decide whether I had something still to offer about this subject, because if I'm not struggling, that means I'm not thinking about it a great deal. Some things are on automatic, and I'm just not sure how helpful it is if I'm not focused on it, as I know I was for 9 years. Now, just to get it out of the way, one of the reasons I'm not that focused on it is that I've had some health challenges, not life-threatening, but enough to alter lifestyles and challenge me. And one of the things that went was my appetite, so that I didn't really struggle with that. And you know what? If you're not struggling with your appetite, you're not struggling with maintaining your weight. In fact, you lose weight. And you're like, wow, okay, I lost 2 pounds. Didn't see that coming. But the bottom line is, I'm now back to maintaining it, but still with not a real struggle on my hands. So the only way I see this podcast, at least as of 2019, being of value is if I interview other people, because I do think that is of value to anyone just happening upon this podcast. So once again, if you would like to share your story or know someone who would like to share theirs, or you think they should share theirs and you talk about it with them, email me at artofthediet@gmail.com and we'll go from there. Otherwise, right now I'm thinking I'm going to do this one first of the year, January 2019. Hopefully I'll get another few folks volunteering to be interviewed. I'm not willing to go out and thump the bushes a lot with this in terms of social media and all this sort of stuff. And forgive me for this. Social media and I are at somewhat of an impasse. How Facebook has handled itself to me is really problematic. And so I'm not inclined that way. And of course, Instagram is owned by Facebook, and I feel a little more positive about that. But I also don't post a lot on my Art of the Diet on Instagram. Usually it's just when I upload a podcast. So anyway, I'm sort of relying on listeners that if you think you've got somebody who would be interested, or you yourself would be interested, and I'm interested in where you are at this point, not necessarily how long you've maintained a weight loss, or if you're in fact losing or returning to losing. I'm just interested in where you are at, because I think that's the value for the listener. And so let me get that out of the way. So for right now, it's still on a monthly schedule. Hopefully I'm going to be offering you more interviews, but that sort of depends on who's interested and who contacts me at artofthediet@gmail.com. If I don't have anybody interested in it, I don't think I'm going to go out and really aggressively try to pull more people in. But I may change my mind on that. I am looking at the Art of the Diet website, and as many as you know, in 2015 when I started it, I wrote every day for a year about how I was maintaining for the 5th year the 60-pound weight loss. And I know that that's valuable material. It was to me, because I really had no idea truly why I was successful this time and not previous times. And now, I'm almost 10 years out, and for right now, because of life's complications, I'm just not struggling with that particular problem. And so I think wherever you're at, the material that I wrote in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, and the podcast in 2018, I think are still relevant. So I'm sort of trying to think of what I can do with that, whether it becomes an ebook or some sort of, you could compile it together without having to read each day. But anyway, so that's what I'm going to do with that, hopefully. The second thing I wanted to share with you was something that I discovered in spring of last year, but, I had done a little bit of it over the course of my life and hadn't really thought of it as being a real resource, but just sort of like taking a walk. Sometimes, you just clear your head. And that has to do with meditation. And of course, one of the real pluses of technology is that if you live in a town that doesn't have a meditation center or teachers of meditation, you can still learn the discipline of meditation and the practice of meditation through apps. And so last spring, I decided to try a few of them. Just experimenting. I wasn't facing the health issues at that point. I was just sort of investigating another tool in my toolbox for sort of balancing out life. And so I started in and I experimented with 4 or 5. If I did 5 or 10 minutes a day, I was, doing good. I was not overly charged up about it, but at the same time, one of the ones that I particularly liked, which was called Inscape, Inscape, had to do with focusing on the breath at that time. That was in May, I think. Subsequently, I think it's also expanded its reach, but initially, most of the meditation sessions that they offered were about breath and how to breathe. And if you're anxious, if you're fearful, techniques of breathing that could get you more in control of your fears and your anxieties. So I said, this is interesting. I could immediately feel a physical difference between me being anxious about X before the meditation session, which could have been 10 minutes, literally, 10 or 15 minutes, and how I felt after the 15 minutes. So a light went off, and it was not an abstract one of feel-goodness or Zen moments or whatever. My problems didn't go away. The anxiety was still there, but I was a little bit more in control of the situation. And for any of you who do have, issues with anxieties and fears, the loss of control is really a scary thing. So I started to do a little bit more of it and expand it out, and then discovered another one called 10% Happier, whose name I totally hated, but I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try. And over the course of the summer, when the health challenges entered into it and I was looking around for how to manage all the emotional stuff, I upped the time that I spent with Inscape and with 10% Happier. And I realized after the course of 3 or 4 months that this really was contributing to my handling this phase of my life a little more skillfully than I would have without it. So I'm bringing it up because it addresses my issues that I've had in the past 6 or 8 months. And you don't have to share those exact issues, but if you share challenges in your life, like weight maintenance or relationships or illness or children or worries or caregiving, anything that engenders that feeling of fear, of panic, of anxiety, I'm just going to say to you, I'm not really the most likely person to be talking about meditation. I had somebody yesterday go, "You were doing what? For how long?" Because now I do it for up to an hour. Not all at the same time, but sometimes it's an hour. But sometimes it's a half hour, sometimes it's 45 minutes, and sometimes I do morning and afternoon, sometimes during the day, and at night. So it really has, I've allowed it into my life somewhat skeptically, but the hinge of it was based not on an abstract feeling of, oh, I'm going to get to some zen-y spot. The reason that I pursued it was that immediately upon learning some of the breath techniques, I physically felt better. And you know how sometimes you go to a counselor or you're talking to a good friend and you're wanting to feel better about whatever it is. And for one reason or another, either your presentation or their listening, it doesn't happen. And you don't leave the interaction with a feeling of being heard or being seen. And so that sort of adds to whatever the problem was. This meditation practice, if you commit to it on a daily basis and increase your time to it, you can have that experience with the meditation, but you can then continue to practice on that same day and take a look at that disappointment in a different way so that it doesn't become one of those circular thoughts that keeps going around, and is just not contributing to you putting your life in balance. So I really thought, in a way, this practice is something that you do have control of over, whereas other situations, whatever treatments you're undergoing or whatever relationships you're in, and you're looking for something from somebody, and if they don't deliver, you can ruminate on that and you can explain it and whatnot, but the bottom line is they're not delivering. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to just toss them out? Or are you going to realize what it is that you need, that you're expecting someone else to fulfill that need? And if you identify the need, it may be you're able to be a little more flexible about how you go about it. Now, I'm going to give you an example, which is not in terms of a relationship, but on yesterday, January 1st, my friend who helps me clean and organize my house, which, let me tell you, this is a service I need on a regular basis. And she's the perfect person because she is driven to be organized and to work. And she needs to get out of her house. She's not at all comfortable spending a day in the house. So she is someone who will work on a holiday if you want her to. And so January 1st, of course, is a holiday, and she has her regular clients, and I usually am one of them, and she comes at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesdays. So I'm doing my meditation thing, and I was only about 10 minutes into it, and I was really looking forward to doing a 45-minute thing because I really needed it, I felt. And it was about 7:15, 7:30, and my doorbell rang. I went, what? 7:30? Doorbell? So I go, and it's she. And she's like, my other client wasn't up. I knocked on the door. Nobody answered. I didn't want to go in. And then she said, and I thought, well, you'll be there. Which, of course, she's right. But I was doing my meditation, and I was like, but I'm doing my meditation. Vacuums and things and talking, I can't do it. She said, well, I'll just go in I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And she said, and I'll just go in and start, and don't worry about it. And you can do whatever you were doing. But I knew that with all the noise and back and forth that it was not going to work. So I said, all right, self, how are you going to respond to this? You're going to be pissed off? You're going to tell her not to do it? No. And I realized, okay, I'll go out for a walk and do a walking meditation, which over the course of the past few months, I've heard about different strategies to do it. And so that's what I did. So I took myself out, and it turned out that if you go walking at 7:45 in the morning on New Year's Day, you're pretty much by yourself, okay? It's you and the birds, and no cars, no other people walking around. I'm in a complex that's fairly large, so usually there's people walking their dogs and cars going by. There's none of that. And so for 30 minutes, I was walking around, listening to the birds, noticing the colors in the sky, which really the winter skies in New England in the early morning have almost Caribbean colors in the sky. I don't understand it. There's aqua green, aqua blue, turquoise, and bright robin's egg blue. It's astonishing. And the sound of a drain, because we'd had really tropical rains the night before, the sound of the water going into the drain was like a symphony. So that's how I spent my 30 minutes, was walking but observing sounds, then observing colors that I would see, different shades of green, and just visually noticing all that I could notice. And that was the meditation, is really trying to be more present. Well, I usually walk listening to a podcast, music, but mostly podcasts. So this was a time where I didn't have AirPods in my ears or anything. I was just open to the outside. So I realized when I was walking back, I said, I'm grateful that I was knocked out of my quiet meditative seat at 7:30 in the morning and chose to go outside rather than being, pissy and, grumpy, because I got a lot out of it. And I think I'm going to start, when the weather agrees with walking for a half hour, I'm going to do it again. So here's an example of a bit of flexibility that I'm telling you I wouldn't have had 7 months ago. I'm not sure I would have said, no, don't come in, but I would have been grumpy about it. I would have. And so I just share it with you because whatever problems you have, and it doesn't have to be problems that are similar to anyone else, they just have to be challenges that you have. If you check out these meditation apps, both the ones that I mentioned, Inscape and 10% Happier, are paid ones. I do pay a subscription for them. But there are others that are free. I tried those free ones. I wasn't as happy with the voices and the techniques and whatnot. So these two that I mentioned, Inscape and 10% Happier, are the ones that I personally use now on a regular basis. But there are free ones, and I just would suggest that for 2019, if you're frustrated with what you've been doing and it's not been enough, or you're just looking around to try something new, you might want to give this a try and see if it works. I would start with the breath techniques because they give you immediate feedback. And the courses, the 10% Happier is more about courses and guided meditations. And I've come to really love some of the meditation teachers and how they ask me to think about things in a different way. But the breath control and the breath exercises were the key for me to keep this practice up and to expand it. So that's my basic something of value to give you. And I do want to say on the subject of weight maintenance that the only thing that I did in the last 7 months that I did without fail and was directly related to habits that I created 10 years ago when I lost the weight in 2009, was weighing myself every Tuesday. And at different points, I was observing some balance of food choices. When you lose your appetite, you're really not drawn to as many things as you were before, so that was easier. But on those weeks when my appetite returned, the portion of them, again, was easier to do. And on the rare moment when the portion thing was maybe relaxing a little too much, because bear in mind, I couldn't do any exercise. I guess I should have said that beforehand. I couldn't do any exercise for 6 months, no walking, nothing like that. Just go to the store and back. So I really had to eat less, or else it was going to be a problem. But nature sort of cooperated by also reducing my appetite, so that was not a problem, as it turned out. But I'm able now to walk more, and so I did start again with just the no sugar, no grains to try that whole thing out again, which I've returned to over the course of 5 years. And I must say that once again, I'm always amazed at how much easier it is to go through the day without the spikes of a lot of carbohydrates or a lot of sugar or even minimal amounts, even like oatmeal in the morning, that doesn't, it stays with you, but then I noticed a spike in hunger and in appetite. And I don't notice those same things when I'm doing the, eggs or protein or the yogurt and fruit and stuff. And it's full fat fruit, so it's not the non-fat. And full fat yogurt, sorry. So I just want to say to you that whatever habits you have, pick one that is non-negotiable, that you simply are going to do it and you're never not going to do it. And for me, that was weighing myself every Tuesday. All the rest was negotiable. Food choices, quantities, types, balance of food, exercise, all of that had to be flexible. But as long as I could stand up, I could weigh myself. So that's my little bit of 2019 advice. Just pick one thing that's non-negotiable. You're not going to be listening to yourself say, well, I think I'll, weigh myself on Wednesday because I'm going to be really good today. And forget it. Just get on the scale. Boom, you're done. You start again. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I really wish you the best, and those of you who are still listening, I thank you for your loyalty. And hopefully between now and the first Wednesday in February, I will have another interview for you. And if not, I guess I'll figure this out in the next few weeks. Okay. Over